Hello and welcome back to Super Smash or Pass DLC, which today we're going to be taking a look at Sceptile from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire.
Colors weave into a spire of flame. Distant sparks call to a past still unnamed. Bear this torch against the cold of the night. Search your soul and reawaken the undying light.
So of course, Sceptile first made its appearance in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire back in 2003 for the GBA, and then 2 years later for Pokemon Emerald, also for the GBA in 2005. In 2014, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire got remakes for the Nintendo 3DS called Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And Sceptile is, of course, the grass starter Pokemon for all three of these games. Now, technically speaking, Sceptile can appear in every single Pokemon game, including things like Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, because, of course, that's how Pokemon works. You can transfer Pokemon from up to Generation 3, ironically, all the way up until the current form, unless you count the online ones and from the eShop. Then you can also transfer from Generation 1 and 2. But physically, from Generation 3 forward, you can transfer your Pokemon up until the most recent game, which currently, until this Friday, is Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Sceptile also currently appears in the Pokemon Go mobile game, which is, of course, a huge thing and is why I'm mentioning it. So all these things, Sceptile is technically always present in Pokemon, but you know, the way I factor it and the way I look at it is it's the Hoenn Pokemon, it's from the Hoenn games, so we're going to categorize its most recent appearance back in 2014 with the Oras games. Now, Sceptile in terms of moveset would be an interesting Pokemon. Sceptile is supposed to be a very quick Pokemon. It's fast, it's nimble, it's a good fighter. This is pretty characteristic if you look at things like in the anime, Ash's Sceptile, always a really good fighter, very quick, very, going. Sawyer's Sceptile in the X, Y, and Z anime, also very good fighter and very quick fighter, so I think this is kind of have to be translated into Sceptile's moveset in Super Smash Bros. So the way I kind of think of it is that Sceptile would be a lighter fighter, sort of like in between Greninja and Incineroar behind me. It would be a Pokemon that is a close combat fighter, but it wouldn't have as much bulk and as much heaviness to it as Incineroar seems to have. In that case, it would be a little bit more like Greninja, although probably a little bit heavier than Greninja, to give it that quickness. So the way I would think you'd play with this Pokemon is that you go in, you get into your close combats, you set off Leaf Blades and whatnot to do a lot of damage as quickly as you can, because if you stay there too long, you're going to get knocked out. Although not so much as going in and coming back out as Greninja is, just get in there and knock out your opponent quickly. To aid Sceptile in this, I think you should use moves like Seed Bomb and Grass Knot to kind of trip up and positions its opponents in the way it needs them to be. So Seed Bomb could either be a thrown move, like Ivysaur's Seed Bomb, but probably more to the sides, or it could be something like the Proximity Mines from the game. They could also use things like Grass Knot, could also be more like a Proximity Mine, where it would leave this little flower or whatever in the ground, and if you walk by, it would snare you and trip you, like from the Mechanic and Brawl. And I think that could help give Sceptile ample time to get in and do what it needs to do and give it a good opening, because if it doesn't have that, it's probably going to get launched out of the battle fairly quickly. Another move I think would be great to put on Sceptile is Solar Beam. Solar Beam would be a good option in a dire situation. So how I picture Solar Beam working is similar to like Aura Sphere or Samus's Charging Blast or Donkey Kong's Punch. So you need to charge up this attack, and you can't shoot out earlier versions of it like you can with Lucario's Aura Sphere, for example. No, you have to wait until it's finished charging. Once that happens, you have a couple minutes or seconds to fire off this laser, and you'd probably want to have this set up when you charge into a fight, so then when you got into a sticky situation or you want to finish off an enemy, you would send off a Solar Beam to knock the opponent out. And I also think the move Synthesis could help Sceptile quite a bit, because it would give Sceptile something else to do. We know that a Pokemon like Incineroar is going to be very bulky and have a lot of defense, so it's not going to have to worry as much about being launched. Sceptile wouldn't have that. So you have Synthesis. If you can get yourself away from your opponent for long enough, maybe tripping them up with a Grass Knot, getting out, and healing yourself with Synthesis. Now, Synthesis would only heal up to a certain percentage, and it would also leave you completely open to attack. balancing out the move a little bit more. So just like in the game, it would have to sit there and absorb sunlight in order to heal itself. And of course, for its final smash, I think you have to go with the elemental hyper beam move of Frenzy Plant. I picture Sceptile mega evolving into its mega form and trapping its opponent in this huge mess of tangled up vines and launching them or something or other, maybe like grabbing them and bringing them down into the earth. That would be kind of cool. I don't know, but I think Frenzy Plant would be the right move to use. You could use Solar Beam, but I think Solar Beam would be better off as just a regular move to use as opposed to a final smash, because I just don't think it's special enough looking in that. I mean, Leaf Storm would also probably be a really good looking move and a pretty cool idea, but I think Frenzy Plant would be like the coolest one out of all of them. I especially like the idea of the vines like coming up out of the stage and pulling its opponent down into the stage. Pretty cool. Relevancy. We kind of already talked about this and touched on this earlier on in the episode because, like I said, it's a Pokemon, so technically speaking, they're always relevant. But if we're going to get more into the nitty-gritty of it and actually talk about the details of it, I don't know that Sceptile is super relevant right now. The reason being is that Oras released back in 2014, which on paper sounds really good considering we know this game went into development in 2015, right? It looks like a good opportunity for Sceptile here. The issue with that is that currently, looking at all the information we have, I don't think the DLC was chosen back in 2015. Now, I could be wrong, and we're going to have to wait to see what DLC characters come out to really gauge on that, because if the first DLC character comes out and they're like, oh, we picked him a long time ago, there you go, then it's 2015, and then that changes things. But as of right now, we're going forward with the idea that it was chosen more recently. Sceptile hasn't been in a game important-wise in a leading role since 2014. That's 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. It hasn't had a major appearance in the anime since as well, because it was a major character in the X and Y and the XYZ seasons of the anime, which of course have already been replaced by the Sun and Moon anime. So Sawyer and his Sceptile aren't showing up, and Ash has ditched his Sceptile for a very long time now. I do think Sceptile would be a good representative for Hoenn, though. I think it shows off the potential of the region and is a good choice. I don't think Swampert could really do what it needed to do in this game. It just doesn't seem like the right kind of fit. And I also think, although I do have to say, Blaziken would probably be a better option when it comes to a Hoenn Pokemon. I think Blaziken is more akin to what Lucario was for Generation 4 than Sceptile, but I don't think Sceptile would be a bad choice. Another factor we have to look at when we're talking about Sceptile is the main reason why we're even talking about Sceptile, or why we began talking about Sceptile back during Smash Bros. 4 DLC speculation. We now once again are in the same position we were in Super Smash Bros. 4. Greninja is a final stage water type. Back then it was Charizard. Now we have Incineroar as a final stage fire type. This once again debalances the game. Now, technically the balance of Fire, Water, Grass is filled because we have the Pokemon Trainer, and Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard are implemented and represent that whole trio idea. However, if we're going to look at outside fighters, it's not as balanced. We had the same problem we had when it was just Greninja and Charizard, and why Sceptile was even brought into discussion to begin with. And when you look at Grass-type starters, Sceptile's probably the best choice as of right now. Venusaur probably wouldn't make it into the game because Venusaur would just be Ivysaur but bigger, so probably not who you'd want to choose. Meganium just doesn't have the popularity, and I don't think casual fans would recognize Meganium unless they played Gold and Silver or Heart Gold and Soul Silver, so that probably wouldn't be the choice. Torterra, much like Venusaur, just doesn't seem like the kind of Pokemon you would choose, although its moveset could be potentially interesting, seeing how Torterra tends to be based on defense mainly, and that could be a little bit interesting, but I just don't think it's the type of Pokemon we'd see in there, and much like Meganium, I don't think it's as recognizable to a majority of people. Superior also has that same problem because it's not recognizable. I mean, if you're going to choose someone from that game, it'd probably be Samurott, but even then, I think the Gen 5 starters might be some of the most least recognizable Pokemon out there. And then when we talk about Gen 6 and Gen 7 with Chestnut and Decidueye, I actually think both of these characters are more interesting and better options for Smash Brothers fighters. But the reason we're not talking about them, and the reason I don't think they'll make it in is because we already have Incineroar and Greninja. If they wanted to add Decidueye, they would have added Decidueye. They chose Incineroar instead. If they wanted to add Chestnut, they would have added Chestnut, and they instead chose to add Greninja. I actually think Chestnut would probably be the most interesting of all these characters and would be a great idea for Smash Brothers, as it would be completely different in its fighting style from both Greninja and Incineroar. Sceptile, however, I do think is way more samey to Greninja's playstyle, even with this moveset I've tried to come up with it to distinguish it a bit. I think the idea of a fast and hard-hitting Pokemon, while great within the metagame of Pokemon, makes it a bit samey when we talk about it in the form of Super Smash Brothers. And if we take away its speed and its weight, I just don't think it makes Sceptile. You start to step away from what that Pokemon is, and that causes issues. So yes, Sceptile would fit our Fire, Water, Grass trio. Sceptile is a popular Pokemon. People like Sceptile. People really like Sceptile. I'd argue Blaziken's more popular, but still, even then, it's an insanely popular Pokemon. So why do I think Sceptile's a bad match for this game? Honestly, I just think it's a matter of timing. I think Sceptile's best shot at this game was back in Smash Bros. 4. It was the perfect time. And honestly, if Mewtwo hadn't come back as DLC, I think we could have seen Sceptile enter the game based on how recent Oras was. But now things are different. Oras is now 4 years old, and a new Pokemon game is on the horizon. Generation 8 is going to be here in November of 2019, and while, yes, a year from now is still a long time, Smash Brothers DLC might not be finished until 2020. So if they did choose the final 5 characters recently, that's a perfect amount of time to get the new Generation 8 starter into this game. Whether it be a grass starter or some other Pokemon they choose, it would be a perfect opportunity and a great marketing tool for Nintendo that Sceptile just wouldn't bring with it. So I know it sounds like I'm a broken record because I kind of made these exact same points in our Who's Going to Be the Pokemon Rep video, where I decided that Decidueye would be a better choice than Sceptile, and I still agree. I think a Generation 8 grass starter would be a better choice than Sceptile. And it's unfortunate because I do think Sceptile would be interesting in this game. I do think Sceptile is a good choice for this game, but it falls into the same holding cell that Pokemon like Zoroark fall into because it just didn't have the right timing. Its game just didn't come out in the optimal time to be added as a Smash Brothers character due to every other Pokemon overshadowing it. I mean, Lucario, Greninja, Incineroar, all these Pokemon have more reason to be chosen at this current stage in time over Sceptile. Not because they're more interesting in their moveset, not because they're better Pokemon, but because of their relevancy at the time of the release of the Smash Brothers games that they are featured in. So as most of you have probably already guessed, unfortunately, we're going to have to be giving Sceptile the verdict of leaving my current ticket choices completely unchanged. Now, as for your viewer choices, we have to set that up. So, ultimately, from what I gathered within the comment section, the choices that people wanted me to add into the fan ticket sections is Shantae from the Shantae series, Sora from Kingdom Hearts, and Banjo from Banjo-Kazooie. So there are 3 of your 5 characters decided. Now, don't panic. You can change these votes whenever you want. So, example, for today, your choice is now. Vote in the poll, vote on Twitter and Instagram, and choose whether or not you want Sceptile to be awarded a ticket as a potential DLC fighter. Once your ticket banner fill up, you'll have the opportunity to vote to switch out characters and eliminate current picks from the choices. So don't be afraid if there's someone on there that you don't like, you can possibly get rid of them. Alright guys, that's all for today. Let me know. Remember to vote in the poll because come on, it's just fun. Voting is good. It's a good thing. You should vote. It's important. But remember to like, comment, favorite, subscribe, share this video with your friends if they want to talk about Smash Brothers DLC, or if you want to get a specific character winning in the poll. That's a good way to do it. You know, you can vote as many times as you want and tell people to vote how you want them to vote, and that's a good way to stuff the ballots. I can't believe I'm technically saying something that should be considered an illegal action to be okay, but I have no rules against it, so I guess it's fine. And I'll see you guys next time. That's it.